All right. Well, President Bola Tinubu has crossed the 100-day mark, having been sworn in as Nigeria's 16th president on May 29. Unexpectedly, reactions are mixed. Even before assuming office, the president had vowed to hit the ground running, and he did just that. So much that he was described in the international media as Baba Go Fast. Well, this was mainly a result of the quick fire steps Tinubu took within a few hours in office, and none was more stunning than his fuel subsidy is gone pronouncement, which was swiftly followed by a quantum leap in the pump price of fuel, to the dismay of many Nigerians. Well, conversely, the president's inauguration day speech was well received elsewhere, as less than 24 hours later, investors in both the equities and money markets responded positively. Now, the stock market particularly appreciated as investors gained 1.51 trillion naira in response to the Tinubu administration's plan to unify foreign exchange rates. And of course, the new government did exactly that and more. He floated the naira, raised taxes, and also suspended Godwin Emefiele, the central bank governor. Well, I have joining me virtually to discuss this, John Akerele, a social affairs commentator. Good morning to you, John.
Good morning, my brother. Thank you for having me, and good morning to all of our viewers all over the globe.
All right, then. I think I have a bit of a problem hearing you, but your audio is quite clear from over there, but I think it's a problem from over here. But it's fine. Well, let's start by your personal assessment of the president's major achievements ever since he resumed office. Your personal view. How would you assess
For me,
highlights?
I would I would highlight some of his achievements in the past 100 days. The fact that he was able to form his cabinet within the stipulated time he promised. Looking at within that frame of 2 months, he was able to set up his cabinet, have good. Even though some people will not agree with the list of ministers, some people have the opinion that it's bogus when we're talking about cost and cost of governance. But for me, I think there are some ministers that tick the box for me, and I can't wait for them to start running their offices and let the people feel the dividends of democracy in the offices. So in terms of ministerial appointments, I'll give him a thumbs up. In terms of his pronouncements, I'll give him a thumbs up, even though those pronouncements are faced with harsh realities and Nigerians are actually languishing in pain right now based on those pronouncements. And one of such pronouncements is removal of fuel subsidy, which I would have expected that even though it's a scam and should go, but the mode of going should be something that must have been calculated, debated across board, and make sure all stakeholders are on board to make sure that they can be able to cushion the effect of this. And also the plan on the money that you are going to save from subsidy. What are we going to do with it? And I think because there's no clear-cut plan on ground before now, that's how we are having different state governments coming up with different names in terms of palliative schemes. And that for me is not a welcome idea. We'll give to the president. He has hit the ground running as he promised. He has his ministers, 45 of them. But we are still waiting for the Minister of Youth and Sport Development, which I think is a very key segment where I belong to. And I'm still waiting that we'll have, how come all ministers are there? But that of youth and sport development is not there. That's lacking. And that is against the promise he made. So I think before we get to 150 days, we should have a Minister of Youth and Sport Development so that he can actually champion the cause of young people in Nigeria and we can move on. In terms of his international relation, I think the president has also done well. In terms of his interference with the issue of ECOWAS and Niger, he has done his own part as a diplomatic president in terms of looking at dialogue instead of military intervention. But I would have also expected that same response as the chair of ECOWAS, that the same response should be given to Gabon, because if you look at the rate of military takeover in the Sahel, it's something that is really worrisome and is troublesome. And I think the president also should know that when military junta take over power, is as a result of a failed leadership, and that he, as the president of Nigeria, should take a great lesson from Niger, who is our close neighbor, from Gabon, from Burkina Faso, and from Mali, that because of the sit-tight mentality of African leaders, that's why military are taking over. Because of bad governance, that's why military are taking over. And I think he should learn a lesson from there, that he, now being the president of the country, should do the right thing by making sure that Nigerians really enjoy his tenure as the president of Nigeria, and so that we don't have a military takeover in Nigeria, even though I'm strongly against military takeover. But if there's bad leadership over time, people will be frustrated and be pushed to the wall. So on that regard, I think he should learn a lesson from the fig tree in West African countries that have had their own military coup, so that we don't have the same replica here in Nigeria. And what can avoid that for us is that we have good, dedicated, responsive, accountable, and transparent form of leadership, which is the president. In terms of his international engagements, he just returned from Dubai and India, and you can see that the gain from the Dubai trip was that the issue of visa ban on Nigerians has been resolved. Why? Because the number one president, the number one person in the country, had to move in physically, and we need more of such intervention. When there's an issue between Nigeria and other countries, we should have a responsive president who should be there in person to attend to this issue and speak for Nigeria as a country, unlike saying delegates who do not really have the capacity to speak in that regard. And I think for me, that's a turn up. That's a good point, and that shows that it's actually placing Nigeria on the global standard as a country that everybody can work with. So in that regard, it's good. You can also see that they also said they brought in some money from India in terms of investment. That's a good one. But even though I'm against that kind of fund, because there are some things we need to check back home here to make sure that these funds do not just go into the drain. And in terms of our infrastructure, in terms of those things we need to put in place, we have not done that. So I think he should look at how, going forward after these 100 days, what is the pass mark? Can he also have this kind of feedback from the people? And I think that is the way to go as a serious government. When you are leading people, always ask questions. Always ask questions in terms of feedback from the people. How are we faring in the past 100 days? Don't expect that people will come and hail you. Don't expect that. And I think you should expect great and big criticism from them. But from all these criticisms, you will see that there are some areas that you need to adjust, areas you need to work on, areas you need to do better on, and that will also make your next 100 days to be better. And that will keep, having better performance upon better performance. And before you know it, your 4 years is done, and you can point to good track record of achievements, improvements, innovations, and economic stability over a period of time. Because before you know it, Moses, 4 years will be finished, and you look back and there's nothing you can say that this administration is what we have achieved. And also, what also they also need to look at again is to look at the fact that where are we before? Where are we now? What is the buying capacity of an average Nigerian before? What is it now? What is the ease of doing business in Nigeria before? What is it now? These are the realities that Mr. President can get on his table, even on his own tablet, even not calling ministers. And those are the indicative indexes that I think he should be working on going forward in the next 100 days. But so far, so good. The past 100 days for me, I think if I'm to rate Mr. President, I'll give him a 7/10 in terms of all of these parameters that I mentioned earlier.
That's a generous one indeed. 7/10. All right, and yes, he did say he was going to hit the ground running, and he did exactly that. He hit the ground, and he's been running ever since. And, well, you touched on the ministers. The ministers, 45 of them eventually were approved, and they have occupied their seats. And, some of them are, we can actually see what they are doing. The Minister of the FCT, Minister of Infrastructure, so we can see what they're doing. But let's take a look at the president. In as much as he's been going outside the shores of Nigeria, getting deals, $14 billion, from India, UAE. He was at the UAE. I think he still is there. At the UAE, lifted. He was, he was instrumental in the lifting of the visa ban on Nigeria, and he has negotiated that airlines, Etihad airline, and come back and start flying with immediate effect, and that's good. That's good for Nigeria. But let's touch on the ministers now. Some pundits have said that the ministers are a little too much, especially when one is thinking of cutting down costs. Having 45 of them, wouldn't that put a strain on the government, especially government expenditure at this time that Nigerians are trying to rake in as much money?
Moses, let's not lie to ourselves. Government upon government, in fact, successive government, if you check their budget and expenditure, it does not reduce. Rather, it's on the increase. Just go and check. Year in, year out, the budgets will always go up. And you would expect that even when this budget is increasing, infrastructure development, economic stability, economic growth should be increasing. But reverse is the case. You see that allocations are going up, but projects are not going up in terms of completion of projects. In terms of living standard of people, it's not improving. In terms of wages and salary, it's not improving. And that is where the government should understand that there's a disconnect between this money and what the people ought to get for voting for us to get into power. So for me, the ministers are way too many when we are talking about cutting down the cost of governance. And I think over time, we just say cutting down the cost of governance on paper and a lip service. But in actual reality, we don't cut down cost of governance. Rather, we show ambiguity. We show frivolous spendings. We show unnecessary luxury at the end of our affairs, and people are the creditors of power, from the presidency to the vice president to the president of the Senate to the Speaker of the House. Check their entrance when they come into the chamber. Then you ask yourself, is this a president or a Senate president? And then we ask ourselves, where is all this money coming from? And if you look at it, all of this spending comes from the budget. And that's why we spend so much money on things that does not matter, on things that does not improve our lifestyle, our standard of living as a people, does not even improve our public service delivery, does not improve our infrastructure. And at the end of the day, is garbage in and garbage out. So for me, I would have expected that there are some ministries that should be merged so that the minister will have more work to do. Because already, if you are being nominated as a minister, you should know that it's not a carnival. It's not a jamboree kind of thing. It's real work. And I think most of them should know that they should come even to the office with their short knickers, because they will always be on the field, to get their hands dirty on the job. Somebody like Minister of FCT, Nyesom Wike, somebody I like so much. Why I like him? Not because of his political standing or because of his political sagacity, but because of his ability to deliver projects. And that's the kind of man I want, And I'm also expecting that the same way he replicated some of these projects in Rivers State, FCT will also have a feel of who Mr. Nyesom Wike is. And I'm sure it's going to do that. At least he has said some projects will be commissioned, and in no time the rail line Kaduna Abuja will come back to be activated. And since he has said that, I'm sure he's going to fulfill that. But other ministers, last one, Moses, please. There is something that one of these ministers should do for us, and that's the minister who is in charge of foreign affairs, tourism, creative industry. These three are the ones who should manage the image of Nigeria home and abroad. And why am I saying this? It's because when people see the green passport, they have a mindset. And these three key ministries have that responsibility of reshaping, rewriting the story when it comes to Nigeria and present us in a better light, in a global standing, even as reality on ground.
Well, I think the president is doing that already. I think he's trying to do that because we know why. I don't know if you recall the reason a visa ban was placed on Nigerians going into the UAE. It had a lot to do with the behavior of Nigerians in that country at that time last year. Some Nigerians were, rioting, causing chaos in that country, and Nigerians were deported. So for the visa ban to be lifted with immediate effect too. I think he's doing a lot in repairing the image of Nigeria as it is. Now let's talk about the first statement he made and the concomitant effect of it. He did say fuel subsidy is gone, fuel subsidy left at the time, and government did say they were going to put measures in place to cushion the effect of it, cushion the sufferings of the people. Government has been doing something in that regard. 5 billion naira, out of which 2 billion has been received by some states. Some states are spending it the way they deem fit. Some are buying buses, some doing things with the money. But no talk has been, nothing has been said about fixing the refineries as it is. And yes, the president inherited the Dangote refinery. It was something that he inherited because that refinery was inaugurated before he came into office. And here we are. Dangote refinery, we just read today that Pengasin was saying that, look, they are disappointed. The refinery cannot go into production. And the president himself has not categorically addressed Nigeria's own refineries. We have not had talks about fixing it. Is it that Nigeria is not thinking in the line of fixing those refineries and stopping the exportation and importation of fuel as it is for Nigerians to use? What do you say to that?
You see, let me not use this word for my president, Bola Tinubu, but I'll be forced to use that same word. If you want to be a lion, be a lion. If you want to be a dog, be a dog. Don't be a dog and bark like a lion. No. Okay. Why am I saying that? I'm seeing double standard here. If you have made a good pronouncement, fuel subsidy must go. I think with that same tenacity from that day that you made that pronouncement, there should be a tenacity also to make our refinery to start working. From that very day, it should be a statement like fuel subsidy must go. Our refineries in Port Harcourt, in Kaduna, in Warri must work. That is a balanced statement. Okay? Because one of the reasons why we have fuel subsidy is because the refineries are not working. And that's why we need to import fuel. And because the cost of importing fuel is on the increase, we need to subsidize. So that is even what brought the subsidy in the first place. So if the subsidy must go, which I agree, we must also look at the underlying causative agent of the subsidy. What brought subsidy is that our refineries are not working. For God's sake, let's stop talking about this Dangote refinery. Dangote refinery for me is a private entity. It's not a government entity. Even though government have shares in it. But the question to ask, Moses, and that is really baffling, if Dangote can have the cooperation with other people and build a refinery within 4 years, how come we have a government that been in power for 8 years and could not even build one? How come? It shows that the government and the people in it, some are intentional about, sabotaging the effort and not making the refineries to work because they are eating from the rot of the land. It will amaze you that people like you and I cannot eat out of subsidy money. Why? Because we are not the big boys. Who are those who do oil bunkering? To have a vessel, is it a organizer that can have a vessel? It's not. Is it a journalist like you that will have a vessel? Never. So those are the big people who are eating from the rot of the land. And I think that the president, should be affirmative in that regard as well and say subsidy must go, refinery must work. Then I would say that is a balanced statement. And the same way we are saying subsidy is gone. It's gone truly. Can we also start working on our refineries? Moses, for God's sake, why have 4 that is not working? If possible, if you can sell the 4 and build one that is functional. that we can be assured that yes, we have one refinery that is functional. And the problem is that we only talk about oil, but we lose some other things from oil, which we are not looking at, and that is the pain, the pain for me. Yesterday, we were talking about the petrochemicals from the Indian companies.
Yeah.
Do you know the number of constituents you can get from crude oil? But we only import, we export crude, we only bring in petrol. What about over 18 other components that are embedded in it? That's the question to be asked. And so that is where you need to create other smaller industries. That's why you need to create more jobs. And if this government say they want to create 2 million jobs, let them stop all these things. The first thing, part of the infrastructure that must be on grounds, our refineries must work. And I think the minister, the petroleum ministry, have a very good work to do in this regard. What are the stumbling blocks? See, Moses, these things are not rocket science. Let's ask questions. Why is this refinery not working? Okay, we have spent over 20 trillion from 1990 to this time, and it is still at this comatose stage. Year in, year out, we allocate money for this refinery. Where is the money going to? Who is doing the maintenance? These are things, these are questions we need to ask. How come this refinery is not functioning at its optimal level? And yet we keep spending money every month, every year. Some people are just there, sitting down in their office, get the allocation from the budget. After they get allocation, they share it among themselves. The refinery is under lock and key, and no heaven will fall, because this is Nigeria. And so these are some of the things I would have expected that the president from that proclamation would also go in that same light, so that people can see that indeed subsidy is gone, but the problem of subsidy is being fixed in terms of our refinery working. Moses, if each of those refineries can do, let's say, 100,000 or 200,000 barrels a day, 4 of them will give us 800,000 barrels a day. That will cushion the effect of the quantity of petroleum we import. And all these marketers that are telling us that there's no effects, they will calm down, because they know that 80% of what we need is already generated internally. We have more jobs created. So 20% that we want to import will not be a problem to us. If that 20% will not be a problem, we know why? Because we must have diversified into CNG, using other alternative form of energy to drive our automobile industry, using other form of energy to generate electricity for ourselves. And so you see that the system will get to a balance by itself when all these things start to work.
All right.
Moses, let's not lie to the states. They know all these things, but the political way to do it, that is where the cobweb is.
Political will. All right. That's what you're hinging it on. The political will. Okay. Now let's look at the president's leadership style. He was a governor in Lagos, and on that grounds, he campaigned for the presidency, and there was a lot of talk about, he developed Lagos, he did this, he did that, so let's vote for him because he will do the same thing. He will replicate what he did in Lagos on the national level if he becomes the president of Nigeria. Now he is the president of Nigeria. But how would you describe or analyze the president's leadership style in terms of the evolvement? Okay, now let me put it this way. How would you say that the president's leadership style has evolved over the years? Yes, I think that's a better way to put it.
Moses, let's not lie to ourselves. A Tinubu as a governor is not a Tinubu as a president.
Tell me why.
We must get that fact clear.
Tell me why. Tell me why.
Get that one clear first.
How?
A Tinubu as a governor is the Ojuobo that I used to know. Brilliant man, active and agile. I remember the days of Operation Sweep in Lagos. I remember those times that water was working. You can see fetch water from the public tap. I remember those times. I remember we used to do environmental on Saturday morning. I remember those times in Lagos. I was born and brought up in Lagos, so I remember those period. But Tinubu as a president, for me,
Are you saying the sweeter the wine? I mean, the older the wine, the sweeter is not the case in this. Is not the case in this regard.
See, Nigeria is a complex country that needs a young, agile, and vibrant president. I'm telling you.
But there's a
Look
place
at
of
countries like
experience.
Ukraine.
There's a place
You
of
know,
experience.
but see, Moses, this is it. This is it. We need the wisdom of the old and the strength of the youth. In Nigeria presidency, you don't need the physical strength of the old because there's no strength there. I'm sure by the time Baba will come back from Dubai now, and he will have to go on a leave, compulsory leave, because he must go on medical checkup. That one is certain. Because he can't run those trips and not collapse. So he must go on medical trip. But he's our president. But I would have expected a younger Tinubu as a president. Would have been a very fantastic one for me. Because he's somebody who I experienced him personally as a governor in Lagos. So it's not something I read on books or I watched as on TV. No, I experienced Tinubu as a governor in Lagos State. And I can tell you some of the things that he worked on, even though some people will not agree with him, is an inclusive government. You know, during his tenure as a governor, you have people from other regions of the country who are part of his cabinet, even at the legislative arm, and even as commissioners. You have lots of them. And that is somebody who has the talent to, you know, the ability to get talent. But Nigeria is a more complicated one. In Nigeria, you have over 17 states that are northerners. And these people are a different breed entirely. They have a different sentiment entirely, a different mentality entirely. You have a southeasterners. They have a different mentality entirely. So if you are looking at the fact that you ruled Lagos well in 8 years, Lagos is a cosmopolitan city with about 80% of, you know, upwardly mobile people who can relate with you. But Nigeria as a totality, my dear, the truth be told, it won't be a sweet journey. Why? Because you don't have that 80% of mobile people all across the length and breadth of Nigeria. So you're going to have that issue. You're going to have the issue of individual differences. You're going to have the issue of being, you know, traditionally their own region. This is what we do here. This is how we run it here. Right, if you come to Warri, this is how it works in Warri. Okay. If you come to Port Harcourt, this is how it works in Port Harcourt. If you come to Aba, this is how it works. But you are looking at Lagos alone. So you need to understand these people, their region and their peculiarities. Okay? That's why Nigeria is not Lagos. And that's why during the campaign, people are saying he did it in Lagos because Lagos is Lagos. But Lagos is not Abia. Lagos is not Enugu. Okay. He cannot work in Lagos. He cannot work in Enugu.
All right, John.
So I feel that for me is not a good one.
All right, then. So as we make to wrap this up now, the president had a phenomenal 100th day in office. All right, the day that made it 100 days in office was the day the Presidential Elections Petitions Tribunal affirmed his victory in the judgment that same day. Now, looking ahead, what do you think the future holds for the Bola Tinubu administration in Nigerian in the political space in Nigeria?
Well, since you made mention of this judicial issue, I don't want to talk about it before, but now that you have brought it up, let's break the table.
Okay.
The point is this: in a case where people do not seem to trust the process of electioneering, people do not seem to see the judiciary as the last hope of man, we are actually creating chaos for ourselves. You know, when people feel like if there are abnormalities, even though they know that there are abnormalities in the electioneering process, they tell you go to court because they know that the system of our court also have loopholes and that they can exploit those loopholes, you know, in terms of technicalities. And this is just, you know, making something illegal to be legal, legalizing illegality, you know, in the sight of law. And if we are doing that, we are really encouraging a case where people do not even. I hope that voter apathy will not be the end of the day for us going by 2027, because the results of the elections, people are not really satisfied with it. Some have said, let's go to court, we can get redress in court. They've gone to court and the court have shown a different side to it, and they feel biased. And INEC, on the other hand, who made a promise and at the middle of the match, made a U-turn overnight, you know, saying that they have their own discretion, forgetting the fact that they've made commitments and assertions to Nigerians over and over that they will go by the way of real-time transmission. And the question I'm asking INEC, and every Nigerian asking INEC is this: how come you can transmit the results of the senatorial election the same day you can transmit the result of the House of Rep, and that of the president is having glitches? How come there are no glitches for the senatorial and the what's it called? Because these elections are done simultaneously: presidential election, senatorial election, House of Rep. These three are simultaneously. So and even when you are doing the counting, you count the president first, you count the Senate second, you count the House of House of Rep third. Now, if there are no glitches in transmitting those results of the House of Rep and senatorial election results, how come there are glitches in the presidency? So that shows that INEC also have a lot of questions to answer to Nigerians. Now, the judiciary also should be seen as the last hope of man, the common man, where people should know that when they go to court, looking at the facts and figures, even when you see white, and because you know there are technicalities, you are calling it black, even when you know it is white. And that is what we have seen in the judicial step today, which is, I think, is very appalling and is very bad. That also has happened in the case of police also. Thanks to my brother African China, who says in a song, policeman go see white, he go tell you, say, I say that in a red, tell me something, I don't know, make una lead us well, no let this nation to fall inside well, Mr. President. And I think that's what we should do. That's talk about that reform that we need to do all across the board. So you can see that reform we are talking about, it needs to happen in the judiciary, needs to happen in the police, needs to happen in every sector of the economy, so that we can have a country that everybody will feel inclusive. We can have a free, fair, transparent, and credible election and processes of selection. Now, Moses, one thing this election will do for us is that it will also help us in recruiting process as well. How do people get government jobs? How do people get into ministries? How do they get employment? These are what this thing is telling us. So it means that if you have a crooked way, you can make your way to the top. And the next thing is you end in court. Okay? So let's not go by that way, but let's go by the way of other Senate lands where competence, character, integrity, and capacity are the watchword. If you go to other parts of the world today, okay, when Nigerians travel outside this country, how come they are doing well in other parts of the world, but they can't do well in Nigeria? It's because they see that these other places where they go to, they are being given a level playing field like every of their counterparts, and they can also do well. Why? Because they are brilliant people naturally. Okay, but the only thing that's giving us problem in our own country is that all that we need to do to excel is not there. Okay, so this is the way to go for us, and then we should look at it as a people that Nigeria is a country for us. No matter what happens, we should not lose hope in the country, and it's a call to all young people out there. This is not a time for you to be downcasted. It's a long walk to freedom. I say to you again, young people all over the globe, Nigerians listening to me this morning, it's a long walk to freedom. Never lose your hope. It's not a 100-meter race. It's a marathon. And so we're going to have another election in 2027. We're going to have another election in 2031. But this is my point to you all. Until you as a young person, as an activist, get involved in politics at your local level, either be a councillor, be a ward councillor, a party, even at the party level, be involved, go for meetings, and make sure that maybe you're a secretary, just make sure you are involved, and then you can hold people accountable. Until then, can we say we have a country of our own? If not, we just leave it to people who are not fit mentally, physically, and who are not even sound, and we allow them to make laws for us. Imagine somebody who is not well educated being a lawmaker on your behalf, and you're a professor. The laws they make in the chamber will be binding on you as a professor, and you have a problem at the end of the day.
We will have to drop anchor on this right now and then pick up our second topic. Well, up next on VOP this morning, a few days after the tribunal verdict, Atiku's people, that's Atiku's People's Democratic Party presidential legal team, were demanding the immediate release of the certified true copies of the judgment that was given in their disfavor. It took a few days before they were able to get the CTC, which is the certified true copies, and the other things that followed. Oh well, John will have to stay with us. John would like you to stay with us. We'll be back after this very short break, and then we'll delve into this one. Stay with us.
for your